Welcome into Spotlight on Kansas City Sports here on Sports TV Plus. You can watch us anywhere you get your streaming television. We're available on TCL Plus TV. You can download that True TV Plus app. You can also see us on Carbon TV, on Sports.tv, on Watchy, on your Maryland cable systems, and even more services. This is a big week, and there's really one story that's dominating Kansas City sports this week. Obviously, the Royals started the season, and they got a big win in Milwaukee yesterday. They're even up. They're playing right now, Game 5 of the season, but obviously there's a lot of baseball to go. It's the beautiful game. It's football, soccer. Kansas City, the soccer capital of America, and it is going into a state of flux, really, for the first time in a long, long time since Kansas City had a team called the Wizards. Now, Sporting Kansas City, their first head coaching change, their first directional change in decades just happened. Peter Vermes out as the head coach of Sporting Kansas City. And I'm joined by a couple of soccer analysts, Jeff and Joseph Janner, the host of Pitch Pod. You can catch them at Pitch Pod 365, anywhere you get your podcast. And Jeff, you and I sat at the last Sporting home game. Really a pretty dejecting loss to LAFC. I got the picture of Children's Mercy Park up behind me. That empty blue seat area, that is the Bud Light Landing. Those are all-inclusive seats with free food, free beer, microbrew beer, cocktails, wine, everything. Usually jam-packed. If you're going to sit in the Bud Light Landing, you generally have to get there about 90 minutes before the game to get a seat, because it's general admission into that landing area. And it was empty. There was like 5 people there. I've never seen that. And the talk in the press box was, how long can this go on? And Jeff and Joseph, we know now it was one more road loss. The loss to FC Dallas, 2-1. That was it. That was the straw that broke the back. Just to start off, each of you, what's your first reaction just days removed from the story breaking?
Well,
hey, Jeff.
Yeah, first off, I want to say thanks for having us on. We're happy to be here and represent the Pitch Pod. And I like that you put that photo up, because I was explaining this to some of my colleagues, some of my friends, how empty the stadium was and kind of how unusual that was. So thank you for illustrating that. And it's been kind of a sour mood as of late. And with this breaking news, things are changing awfully quickly. And still, I think everyone's processing the fact that the longest tenured coach in MLS history, Peter Vermes, 16 years, is gone. And it's just kind of a shock around Kansas City and Kansas City soccer. And so that's kind of how I'm feeling. I'm just kind of surprised it happened, like you said, right after this Dallas match, and as we approach the St. Louis match at home. I'm just kind of surprised with the timing, I guess.
For me, it's a little bit the same. If I may, for me, it's some of the same in a sense. I might use the word surprise, but I might lend itself to a surprise that it hadn't happened sooner. As in, we looked at the 5-year contract as a question mark, or a couple large question marks in terms of issuing at this level that length of a contract, considering at the time they weren't on the ascendancy. It's not like they were performing. I mean, what I think they squeaked by to make the playoffs, and had an okay showing, but not at the level that it certainly, I would say, Sporting KC supporters had been accustomed to. So the fact that it went on for a while, that's maybe a bit of a surprise, and then at the same moment. So for that, that's my first initial take.
Yeah. Well, and I like that, because I was going to kind of get at that. That was the question I was going to ask, is you let somebody go at this point in the season, and granted, they're dead last in the league right now. They're 0-1-5. The next to last is 0-2-4. But it's a long season. We're months from the season ending. It doesn't end until November. So if you're going to pull the trigger at this point, after all of the turnover on the team, bringing in Dejan, bringing in Manu Garcia, bringing in Shapi Suleimanov, letting Tim Melia go. So you got a new goalkeeper, John Polskamp, who we had on a couple of weeks ago, talking about the difficulty in getting everybody in rhythm and pattern, having to take time because they haven't had training. You know you're doing this massive turnover. And you're considering firing the coach if it didn't click immediately. Well, you brought 3 new players, essentially your offense, your main attackers, Shapi, Dejan, Manu. They're going to be, they have to be the tip of the spear. They had a chance to practice maybe twice before the CONCACAF game against Inter Miami with two of the best to ever play the game in Suarez and Messi. You're losing that game. You're going to lose, period, end of sentence. And I think the reason it stayed close is because it was negative 17 degrees when they played. I mean, it was horrible.
I was there.
How about the reverse fixture? I was in Miami to watch the at Inter Miami, and it was 3-0 at the half. So
and they were lucky it was only 3-0.
Game over at that point.
But they were lucky. They were playing with fire. It could have been worse.
Right.
So if you know that coming in, which, I mean, logically, you know that, you should have let him go during the offseason, because Sporting went over and over at the introductory press conference for Mike Burns, the new technical director and general manager in American sports terms, about how it's a rebuilding season and we're going to take 3 transfer windows to rebuild. So you're laying it out right there that, hey, we let the team get old at once. The young guys we have outside, maybe Jake Davis, maybe John Polskamp, they're not enough. We need to reload. And they didn't say it, but you're kind of implying when you say it's going to be 3 transfer windows before we're where we want to be, you're implying we are losing. I mean, aren't you? When you say it that way, Jeff, isn't that the impression you get?
Yeah, I mean, I think these players were brought on to kind of spur some life into the club. And unfortunately, thus far this season, as you mentioned, it's early, but thus far this season, we haven't seen that, right? I mean, really, I would say outside of our first match against Inter Miami, it's kind of been downhill from there. And it's not clicking, as you've said. It just doesn't look like a well-conditioned, well-ran team. So, yeah, I think those players were brought on for a reason. And right now, thus far, we haven't seen the results of their being there and their impact.
Well, here, let's go to the videotape for a second and take a look back. I got the TARDIS behind me there. Let's go back in time and take a look at this in context and see what we think.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep facing them. You can't shy away from them. We'll spend this afternoon, we'll spend some time looking at video on some of those situations that did occur, but also some other things. It's not just the goal itself. It's how it leads to it. It's how you get there. It's not like, hey, one guy got beat and now all of a sudden this happened. It's never just that. It's a series of other situations that we have to get better at.
Now, there he's talking about a disturbing trend that we've seen in games this year, where it's not the first shot that kills them. It's the deflection and the 1, 2, in some cases 3 players coming in unmarked towards the goal, where, I mean, Polskamp has no chance. Makes an athletic save, and then there's nobody to clear the ball, and there's 1, 2, 3 offensive players just ready to tap it in. That's what he was talking about there. And it kind of bled into a theme of people saying, hey, we haven't had any practice. We're not sure where each other's at. And That does make sense. I watch, try to follow Fulham, and I've been watching their season, and they're having a good year. They make a point of sending out onto all their socials when they're playing what they say is Fulham style, which is connecting passes. And they'll send out videos where they put in each number of completed pass to get to a goal. And when they're clicking, it's like 20 passes completed to a goal. And you can see the buildup. You can tell at about 15 passes in, oh man, they're scoring here because they pulled everybody over to the left. The right wing is coming forward. The right back is going to make an overlapping run. You can't cover two guys. Everybody's over there. They're going to score. And to do that, you need to have that chemistry and know where everybody is on the pitch at the same time. And to a degree, what Sporting's saying, I think, is true, because you got guys who haven't played together. You got 22 guys on a massive field running at full steam, and you have to connect these passes at a razor's edge. It is asking a lot. Have you guys seen, I mean, I know you cover European soccer and kind of cover the game from a world perspective. Are there teams that make this kind of turnover in a tight window and are able to come out and win the next year? Or is that just a bridge too far and it just doesn't happen? Because you need everybody to be in sync. It's not basketball where two guys are enough to carry the team, because that's what a lot of people think. I think that just aren't super familiar with it. Hey, we got Dejan. He took the Galaxy to the MLS Cup. He scored 21 goals. We got him. We just get him the ball. He's fine. Does it work that way?
No. And I think you bring a lot of good points. It's not in sync. Hopefully, as we continue throughout the season, it becomes a little bit better and more in sync. But I think that also lends itself to some tactical problems that you alluded to. The defense needs to step up. I would have some formation changes personally. And so I think with those changes and focusing on specific things like set pieces, I think we could see the team start to click and recover a little bit. I think it's going to be slow going, but I do think it's possible that there's an upward trajectory.
Well, and Joseph, have you seen teams in Liga and Liga MXS and the EPL that have done this kind of major turnover during one off season and hit the ground running and just clicked?
I mean, they'd have to be in a position where it's more than, like you said, 2 or 3 players that they pick up in a transfer window to really have the effect. It goes from having a firm understanding within the club what the philosophy of play. I like the reference to Fulham, where they understand what they're about. They understand what they have to work with, and they have a manager or coach that can make it work. In this instance, if we're talking about the reciprocal or the opposite with Sporting, it seemed to be there wasn't that idea of what they wanted to do. To some extent, I've talked about this multiple times regarding Sporting KC. It's like it was them almost forcing and trying to do the same thing over and over from one season to the next. And even you have opportunities with new players coming in to try something new. It would have been a great opportunity early in the season. And I think there was some shift. I think they did. We talked about, Jeff, you mentioned different formations. They did at times get away from the 4-3-3. They tried to utilize the personnel to the best of their ability, but too little, too late.
Well, here, speaking of that, let's hear from principal owner Mike Illig about what happens the rest of the season.
I mean, for the remainder of this season and the decision being made now, there's still a lot of season left. I think, in the conversation with the guys yesterday, they believe in themselves. They believe in their talents. It's obviously going to take, everyone has talent in this league. Any professional athlete, every team has talent. So it's what you have inside of yourself that defines you to be better than most. So I think our guys they're ready for the challenge. I mean, it's kind of the way we phrased it is it's a new season begins today. And if you saw the training today, that energy was there.
I'm sure there was, because there is a natural reset when we make a big change, right? Everybody's going, oh man, hey. And I do think the guys they're pushing it. It just seems like it was a bad set of opportunities put together because the MLS offseason is so short and you're changing so much because I think if there was one thing that if you take a look back and you say, hey, what was the root cause of this problem? A lot of times in sports, if you're not getting better, if you're not getting younger, you're getting worse. And I think Sporting, that late season run, which was fueled largely by the emergence of a young right and left back in Jake Davis and Logan Ndebe, that kind of sprung life to the team. And they ended up making it to the MLS semifinals and came really close. I mean, they came a bad call away from making it to the finals. That was only 2 years ago. So to be fair, it's not like they've been abjectly horrible. Last year, they made it to the final of the U.S. Open Cup. So there was a gleam. You could see where, hey, man, if everything breaks, if we're healthy, we're going to be there. The problem is in pro sports, as you get older, you get less healthy. And they were running with Andrew Fontas, with Remy, with Johnny Russell, with Tim Melia. I mean, they weren't getting younger and they just weren't getting better. Were they kind of deluded into thinking we're this close because of that late run to the semis and that gave them the idea to just run it all back again? Was that maybe the fatal error?
Yeah, I think you have a valid point in the sense that they need young players, they need youth like Jake Davis, and the players that you mentioned, whether it's Milia or Johnny Russell, it seemed like a vast majority of the season they were on the injured list and weren't even contributing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a valid point. You have to develop young talent and make sure that they're ready to go. As far as did that change some of their decisions going into this upcoming season? Probably a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think they were just trying to secure talent, and for whatever reason, that talent's just not clicking at this point.
Joseph, why do you think that is? Is it just as simple as you got guys who haven't played together and you have to find that right chemistry to link the passes and they just aren't familiar with where they are and maybe we see a dramatic turnaround?
Well, I think I wanted to point out that, when you have, and this kind of lends itself to this whole conversation, when you have a coach in a position for that long and you have players in the system that long, that they kind of get dependent on each other in a sense. Like if those players are at least around in the locker room and they maybe contribute other ways aside from being on the pitch, as having
Mm-hmm.
experience there. So there's a sense of comfort. There's a sense of we're okay with where we're at. And in the structure of the system that the MLS presents, there are clubs and there's other franchises that can be a little bit too comfortable with what they have to work with because they're not looking over the shoulder. I mean, I don't know if we want to get into the conversation about promotion and relegation, but like if you're not having to necessarily look over your shoulder wondering, or wow, we dropped down to the relegation zone, what are we going to do now? And you carry that over, there's a certain bit of, I'll just use the word again, comfort in what you're doing. And why not continue that unless somebody or something happens that requires immediate change?
Well, and MLS is unique among the top tier leagues in the world and not having promotion and relegation, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a movement for that. I think it was the USL. Is that correct, Joe? That said that they're going to be moving in that direction in future seasons.
The USL's top tier is going to do that. Now, of course, the MLS has a billion reasons a year not to do it because of their TV deal with Apple. And they're asking owners, American sports owners, hey, build these enormous stadiums and make this investment. And they weren't open to the idea of getting relegated. I don't think Sporting Kansas City would have been thrilled with saying, hey, you may switch places with so I understand where that comes from. But Yeah, it does give you a pause. Now, has there been a change, a paradigm shift in the MLS from what's needed to win since Sporting Kansas City won their last championship? Is it a different league now? Does it take a massive increase in spending to be successful, or can you still develop yourself and build up from your academy? What do you think, Joseph? Is that still an option,
I
or
mean, I can think of one particular player that's been brought into the MLS over the last couple of years that's changed everything. I'll just go ahead and say it.
yeah?
Messi. I mean, it's a phenomenal experience and a phenomenal result from that whole shift. So, yes, what has Sporting Kansas City done to counter those measures of what is happening? That is where it's not unlike any other professional sports league in the United States. Like, you have to spend money to get the top players, and if your competitors are doing so, you better figure out a way to keep up with them.
Well, here, let me ask you this too, because Messi's unique, but he's not alone, because it happened previously with David Beckham with the LA Galaxy, is spending $5 million, making the first cash for player trade to get Dejan, who led LA to the MLS Cup last year. Is that move enough? And is he the cornerstone you can build a winning championship team around? Or do you need more? Do you need to go get somebody from the EPL, from La Liga?
Yeah, I guess I'll comment on that first. So I do think he's a great player, a great striker with the ability to score. But I think it's also worth noting that he also had the midfielder Ricky Pugh giving him perfect balls all of last
Sure.
season. So I do want to factor that in. I think he's a great player, but I don't think he's enough. I think you have to build and have more around him, more facilitators to get him the ball, like a Ricky Pugh who comes from La Liga. So that's a great point. I just wanted to be sure to share that fact about Ricky Pugh.
No, great point. Yeah. Well, and then here, if we look across the other side of the city as we're heading into the second half here on Spotlight on Kansas City Sports, the referees indicated there's going to be 5 minutes of stoppage time, so we have a little bit of time to go. But if we take a look on the other side of the river, the Kansas City Current in the NWSL, they have shown that you can turn things around extremely fast, because they were bottomed out, and last year and this year it's totally different. And I was at the game this past Saturday. They played the Utah Royals, who not that long ago were FC Kansas City, and played at a high school stadium and drew about 500 people a game before they moved to Salt Lake City. Well, now Kansas City Current play at CPKC Stadium, downtown Kansas City. They've had consecutive sellouts going back to the opening game of last season, 11,500 people plus, standing room only. And they are playing that aggressive, push the ball forward style of play. The mural, as you walk into the media room, says relentless attacking soccer. And that's what jumps out at me as being different. Now, granted, they have Temwa Chawinga, who is a unique talent and probably the best player, maybe the best women's player in the world.
She's great.
And then you
yeah.
pair her with Michelle Cooper, who's looking like she's on the verge of superstardom, making her step up to the U.S. women's national team, and lots of great talent. But here's what they were saying. I talked with Izzy. I asked Izzy Rodriguez, one of the midfielders, hey, what about pushing forward? What about the style? You're up 3-0, you keep pushing forward. Where does that attitude come from?
For sure. We talked about at halftime too, being at 3-0. We wanted to win the next 15 minutes, then the next 15, and then the next 15. So we didn't want to take our foot off the gas at all. We wanted to get another one, and no, we didn't come out with that. But I think, like you said, we were putting a lot of pressure. Temwa sprinting down balls and making something out of nothing. So yeah.
And that's what they did. I mean, they were up 3. They could have been up 4-0, kind of a shaky call They said that Michelle Cooper kind of twisted her shoulder on what was an assist to Temwa that would have put him up 4-0. They were pushing more forward than Utah was, and they were up 3-0 because Utah was afraid, I think, that the Current was going to score again. So they weren't even throwing everybody forward down 3-0 with like 15 minutes to go in the game. What does it take to get that style of play? Is it the mentality, the strategy that Vlatko has been able to put in after leaving the U.S. women's national team and becoming the Currents coach? Or is it more the collection of talent that they have, that you just have a couple of transcendent players in a Dabinia, Temwa, and Michelle that's just lifting it up, and it almost doesn't matter what style they play? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll let Joe start with that one, but I do think it's mostly the mentality and the culture, the organization, with that specific reference to that team. But Joe, why don't you go ahead and take it first on this one?
I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the relentless aspect. So it sounds like, in reverse and kind of going along the theme, this is an organization that clearly has an identity and have the personnel in place, not only the players, but the coaches and the administrative staff to make that happen. And that's what it takes in soccer to be successful.
Yeah. Oh, an effort by the whole
where you're going.
Right? Yeah.
Knowing where you're going, having a plan. And I mean, it can be a simple game at its core, can it?
Yeah, I think so.
Spacing and, well, here, let's see what they said about chemistry, because Temwa broke her own record for consecutive goals in games, 8 games with a goal in NWSL, breaking her own record from last year, and really showing no signs of stopping.
I'm very happy, like,
if it'll play.
I'm very happy, like, because that season I was here, so this season also I was here, so it's not very difficult to know them, also to know me the way I play, also me to know them the way we play. So it's the same team, we didn't change a lot, so that's why maybe we know each other, like the way we play from training and to in the game. So yeah.
Now what I like about that is Temwa is a extremely nice, extremely humble person. You listen to her talking, you think this is somebody that they just pulled up from the academy, and she got a goal, and man, she's happy to be there. She's talking about how they didn't have the chemistry in place last year. She was the Golden Boot winner. She was the MVP. She broke the record for being the first person to score a goal against every team she played against last year. So just keep that in mind. I mean, she's really, really, really next level good. Yeah. But I did like she was saying about the chemistry and knowing where everybody's going to be. That is super important. Is that something you see across the world with the teams that are, striving in the league championship series and CONCACAF in the Euros? Is chemistry more important than superstar talent, or do you need a little bit of both?
I think you need a little bit of both, but chemistry is essential. And you're right. When you see some of these teams overseas play, they're making blind passes. They know their teammate's going to make that run, so they automatically make the pass. So it's pretty fascinating to watch. So yeah, I think you do need both, but maybe I lend chemistry to being a little bit more important.
Okay.
And I'll say this, though, that comes from having a proper training environment. And again, that comes from having personnel, coaching staff that understands how to implement training sessions that bring out the most in players so that they have that opportunity to build that chemistry. So my point being is, you just don't put the best players in a training session in a competitive sporting environment and it just happens. There is some work that is required to get the most, even from the top superstar international player that we've referenced here to the academy player that's getting the opportunity to push up and be on the squad. That takes proper management and proper instruction and proper coaching.
Yeah, it's hard to take a team of great players, and just referencing something that I personally saw when the U.S. men's Olympic team played their final tune-up game for the Olympics last year here against the Japanese team, you're thinking on paper, man, the U.S. team, they're going to kill them. You got top-tier players from the EPL. You got MLS players. You got La Liga players. They're going to kill the Japanese team. This shouldn't even be a game. But it was the opposite because the Japanese team, they had played together since they were 16.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, 23 now. So they had 6 years of playing together. And the U.S. team, it was an all-star team. They just kind of lobbed them together. The only, kind of team up was Gianluca Busio and his midfield partner were on the team. But Busio was hurt, so he didn't even play. And they got thumped. The Japanese team dominated them, despite, on paper, being a vastly inferior team. So, yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. Well, as we're winding it down here, we're into that 5 minutes of extra time that the official showed. What do you want to see in the next coach? I think I do really, I feel for Mike Illich because he showed the emotion that went into this change. I don't think this was by no means a knee-jerk decision, nor is it something he wanted to do. I mean, I firmly believe that because they are a world-class organization and they really do lift everybody up and they have a team mentality. And if you go and talk with their back office people, their sales people, it really is a well-defined team. And they had a great foundation for 2 decades. I mean, Peter Vermes is he should be in, whatever U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame there is for coaching. There's plenty of teams this size that haven't won 1 championship. They won 4. So by no means do I want to hammer what was accomplished. But moving forward, I don't think they're going to make a lot of these changes. What do you want to see them make in that change? Who do you want to see at the helm? Joseph, who do you think they should hire? What, if not a name, what kind of temperament and personality should they have?
Right. I think you're going to shift away from what Peter Vermes was, and you're going to look probably to someone that maybe is going to be able to nurture some of the younger players to get the most out of them, but at the same time be able to have a sense of how to incorporate the star that they should be working to acquire. So in some sense, it's maybe more of a manager type of person that really understands the person and behind the player, however you want to phrase that can get more out of these young men and some with a little bit more experience.
Okay. And Jeff?
Yeah, I would agree 100% with what Joe is saying. It's about managing the personalities, building a team. I am curious to see how our interim does, and I would encourage them to give him time because who knows? It might be a perfect fit. And I also would suggest that they not just look simply for a name. We've seen that happen a lot where teams go out and they look for a big name. But if it's a name and it doesn't fit with the organization, it typically doesn't work out. So I would hope that they're looking for the best fit rather than just a big name.
Offensive minded, defensive minded style of play. Is there a mentality or a formation that you think is the hot formation now that you would push on, or just a coaching philosophy that you want to look for, or not really?
So with our interim, Carey, I think he comes from a defensive background. So I think that's what Sporting needs for this season. I would love to see a 4-4-2, some kind of changes that are a little bit more supportive of our keep, Pulskamp.
Mm-hmm.
But going forward for the future, that's a different question that I'll refer to Joe on. But for this season, I think definitely you pointed out, defense has to pick it up.
That's a good point. Like what is needed right now is definitely going to be different from what's going to be required as they move forward and making a decision. Not only if they do bring in somebody during this season to fill that role, or if they're going to take their time throughout. I would think it would lend themselves to probably having already. Hopefully, that's kind of what I alluded to at the beginning, having a plan in place. If and when they decided to remove Peter Vermes and then put in the interim, they probably had an idea. Well, we're going to give this guy 3 games. We're going to give this guy 3 months. We're going to give this guy through the end of the season. Hopefully, they were planning at that level to know what they had in place to as far as the timeline to work with. As far as a structure and a way to play, that's again going to be dependent on better having an understanding of what they have to work with and the players that are within the system. It may be that they can play a more attacking style, but I also think that they also probably, like Jeff mentioned, like they got to put a couple things together on the back line and to get solid and keep the other team from scoring. They've given up a lot of goals.
Sure.
That's maybe where the interim maybe starts, is how do we limit the opportunities and thus the chances and the goals from the opposition. Start there, build from that, and see where they go.
And then one thing that is going to be different, because Peter was the front office of Sporting Kansas City for years. You now have Mike Burns in place. They're adding a bunch of members to the staff. They just hired the guy who's going to be in Sporting's Hall of Fame, Roger Espinoza, to be a assistant coach on the main team. They're adding scouts. They have a good analytics department. Is that going to help? Do you think that's the way to go? Have a dedicated, use the American sports term, a dedicated general manager, Mike Burns, and then have a manager or a coach, not have them being tied together? Because here, to look on another team in Kansas City, Andy Reid was in charge of everything in Philadelphia. And he had a run that, minus the big championships that Peter won, very similar to the run that Peter Vermes had. Andy Reid in Philadelphia and Peter Vermes here. Lots of similarities. Andy was in charge of everything, and Philadelphia moved on when the team got collectively old. Is it better to have a GM and a coach as opposed to what they had moving forward? Is that going to make it easier to get the rebuild really kicked into gear?
Yeah, I personally think so, for where we're at and where Sporting Kansas City sits at the moment. I think let the new coach just focus on coaching is the way to go.
And Joseph, do you?
Yeah, right. I think that is a more typical model in soccer, in the sense you have the sporting director or GM, and then you have the head coach. Now, that relationship is massively important, because the coach knows what players he can get the most out of. He has to be able to go to the general manager, the sporting director, and ask to make sure then all the way to the top, the funds are there to get those players that he or that person would think that they would need to be successful. That's a dynamic relationship that's very important. That's part of the skill set required these days to be a head coach in soccer. The manager is, how do you relate to that sporting director? How do you relate to the board? How do you relate to the owner? Again, it kind of like we just talked about, from top to bottom, is the vision aligned, and are they able to get the job done? And that's a special place to be, and that's important that they pick the right, Jeff mentioned, the right fit to see out that vision.
Yeah, and it kind of gets back to that chemistry too, because even off the pitch, you have to have that chemistry in place, and all the pieces have to get together. And in the end, I don't think anybody can really be surprised, because they tried to run it back after making it to the semifinals, and I don't know if anybody can really blame them. I mean, they were one controversial call away for making it into the finals of the MLS, making it to MLS Cup 2 years ago. I mean, you can say what you will, that, hey, the season wasn't super successful, the record wasn't great, but they were one hand away from making it to MLS Cup just 2 years ago. So the future can be awfully bright. It's not that far away. And, I think we kind of saw this coming. I just thought when they kept saying that there's going to be lots of more moves, I mean, man, the guys had to be walking around on eggshells. You're talking about how we're going to be turning it over. There's 2 more transfer windows. Well, Manu, Shapi, and Dejan aren't going anywhere. You just paid a bunch of money to get them. So the other moves aren't Jake Davis or not John Pulskamp. It's you. I mean, that has to be a tough environment. So I think we're going to see a different mood as we head through the rest of the season. And I think it's going to start turning upward, and hopefully it starts against St. Louis FC, a natural rival. It's going to be a big game. Hopefully we get a good turnout. The fans got what they want. The letter from the Cauldron and the South Stands. Maybe it was just timing and it just happened to overlap, but regardless, they got the result they wanted. So we'll see what happens here. Let's go to our champion of the week now as we wrap it up here on Sports TV Plus.
Hey guys, it's your girl Ash by Elegance, and you're watching me on Wrestling Spotlight.
Got Ash by Elegance bringing us into our champion of the week. Got the Wrestling Spotlight title here. This week on Wrestling Spotlight, we're ramping up as we head down to WrestleMania. The road to WrestleMania is on. We're going to be previewing AEW Dynasty coming up this Sunday from Philadelphia. Swerve's House has a chance to regain that AEW title less than 1 year after he won it in St. Louis at Dynasty. And we also have interviews playing from Keith Elliott Greenberg about how WrestleMania 3 changed everything. Titus O'Neil talking about his book about fatherhood being the greatest challenge ever. And we got an interview out for all the pro wrestlers out there watching it. Xenia talking about how to promote yourself, how to get over. So all sorts of great stuff on Wrestling Spotlight, along with action from Pro South, Glory Pro, and more promotions. But it's our champion of the week. So, guys, in the world of soccer, doesn't have to be Kansas City, but may as well stay Kansas City focused. Who's your champion of the week this week? Jeff, who's your champion of the week in KC Soccer?
Champion of the week, KC Soccer. You know, I guess I'm excited about having our interim coach, and I think he might change some things up and build some momentum and some positivity. So I guess my champion of the week is Kerry. I'll give it to the new interim coach.
Okay, that's a good one. He does have the record of being the longest associated with one team in MLS history. Been a long time member of the Wizards and Sporting Kansas City. Joseph, who's your champion of the week?
I'm going to go with whomever pinned the letter to the board, the Cauldron, the Kansas City supporters who went out there and asked for what they wanted, and they got it. I mean, maybe a testament to the pen being mightier than the sword in this case, not to get too philosophical, but champion of the week goes to the Cauldron and the Kansas City supporters. Congratulations.
Okay. And I'm going to go with a guy who's been mentioned on both sides of the state line, both for being the head coach of the Kansas City Current on a streak of shutouts, the best team in the league. They have a massive goal differential. And according to reports, a person who was requested to be interviewed for the head coaching job at Sporting Kansas City, Flotko, the head coach of the Kansas City Current, get the championship of the week because, man, that is a team that just seems like they're going to buzzsaw. Maybe Orlando can beat them, but they look dominant, and they're getting back Bia, one of the best players in the world. She made her debut for the season, played about 20 minutes in the second half, and you get Bia, Dabinia, Michelle Cooper, Temwa all together. That's a lot of offensive talent. That's going to be hard to beat, and that'd be a tough choice for Flacco. And yeah,
file under good
say yes. Do you take the interview? High-level coach. He was the U.S. women's national coach. He was a men's coach with the Kansas City Comets. Took them to the indoor championship. I don't know, but that's been reported, not by me. I'm just saying it's been reported online. There's no confirmation, just reports out there, unnamed reports, but interesting. Well, hey guys, Jeff, Joseph, how do people reach out to you? Where can they follow the Pitch Pod?
Yeah, so if they Google at the Pitch Pod 365, they're sure to find our Spotify. We have a website with a blog that I maintain, and we have a YouTube channel that has in-depth player interviews. So again, if you just search on Google at the Pitch Pod 365, you're going to find it.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks a lot for joining us here. We'll have you back on throughout the season because the great thing about the beautiful game is it's a long season. We got all the way till November, so There's plenty of twists and turns coming, and if you're a big-time sporting Kansas City fan, season's not over yet. Just like Mason Toy said, it doesn't really get started until June, so it's okay. There's plenty of time. Don't worry about it. Stay tuned here to Sports TV Plus. You can catch us on TVL Plus, on Sports.tv, on Carbon TV, on Watchy, and you can download that True TV Plus app and take us with you wherever you're at. Lots more great sports and entertainment coming up right here. Have a great night, and we'll see you back here on Sports TV Plus.